Welcome to the Solid Verbal.
The Solid Verbal.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
I've heard so many players say, well, I want to be happy. You want to be happy for a day? Eat a steak.
It's that woo-woo!
And now, Dan and Ty.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildenbrand. Joining me, as always, over there in beautiful New York City, my man, Dan Rubenstein. Sir, how are you?
I want to be up front right here, Ty. Do not tell me what happened in the Notre Dame Clemson game. I DVR'd.
Fine. Done. Done. Done.
I thought I would give you that little out.
Done.
That little treat. And here we are. I'm okay, Ty. I had a fun December 29th. Was
a December
yesterday?
to remember, would you say?
Yes. For some people.
That's for sure.
Some people.
We'll get into that.
I had a very good time watching certain things these past few days since we pre-recorded the final two bowl previews we did. So we haven't had an opportunity to check in on a lot of bowl games, but I imagine it'd probably be wise to check in on playoff games first. So I'm ready when you are. How are you otherwise?
I'm good. I'm good otherwise. People just tend to think that I'm despondent here.
Yeah.
In light of Notre Dame's crushing,
I'm not mad. I just think it's funny.
27-point defeat. But yeah, I'm fine. We'll talk about Notre Dame and Clemson and Alabama and Oklahoma here momentarily. But as you said, we haven't recorded in a week because we pre-recorded our final two bowl preview shows. So it's good to be back recording with you early on a Sunday morning, shaking off the rust. Please forgive us if we're a bit rusty. Before we go any further, I do want to give a shout out to a gentleman whose entry is titled Rookie Draft in our Solid Verbal Bowl pool. It looks like his name is Joe. Okay. Joe is currently in first place. Ooh. He's in the 100th percentile nationally. I haven't had a chance to see where he ranks compared to some of the other folks around the country playing in the ESPN Capital One Bowl Mania confidence pool. But suffice to say, Joe is looking pretty sturdy now as we head into the final home stretch. Still games to be played on New Year's Day, a bunch that we previewed on our shows. Go back and listen to those, not to mention the national championship between Clemson and Alabama. But Joe looking pretty strong at the current moment.
Joe, by the way, if you would like to use this on your resume or blurbed on the back of a book cover,
you can do that.
Quote unquote, pretty sturdy. Ty Hildenbrand, the Solid Verbal.
All right, well, let's get into it. We had fun on Twitter last evening. We had fun on social media as a whole.
We went live on the gram.
We went live on the gram twice. Seemed like that was well received. Maybe we'll do that again at some point in the very near future. Yes. Again, bowl games to be played, a championship game to be played. Let's start, though, with Clemson 30, Notre Dame 3. Most importantly, did you catch Sean McDonough mentioning a softer Brian Kelly? Did you catch that during the broadcast?
I don't know how you couldn't have missed it unless you were muted, and they may have even had a chyron. They may have had a graphic indicating that, an older version of Brian Kelly from 2013 may have flipped out with these fumbles and call reversals from referees and, not having conclusive evidence. But this year's, you can tell there's a calm to him.
There were people tweeting about that comment who had no concept of our Fantasy Things draft at all. And the people who knew about the Fantasy Things draft from a year ago, I don't know if I can retroactively get points for this, but the people who actually knew about the selection couldn't unhear it. People were over the moon excited that Sean McDonough would bring that up.
What a low bar for himself that he has set, Brian Kelly, that he is getting complimented. Hey, he's not a totally worthless and obnoxious reactor to common football things anymore. You got to hand it to him for passing bare minimum level human emotions. Good for him.
I apologize in advance because I'm going to really plunge into some next level analysis here.
I'm ready.
The problem for Notre Dame was that Clemson was way better. I think it comes down to that.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be overly simplistic, but there are simply no excuses that I can make that are going to erase a 27-point margin and give Notre Dame an edge. Right. There just aren't. That said, Notre Dame had a few plays that almost went their way. and were overturned by replay. They needed to get a few bounces to really give themselves a chance in this one.
Were they actually difference-making plays, though? Like so Notre Dame forces a fumble on that Clemson kick return pretty early on.
Right.
And had Notre Dame recovered it, say, on the Clemson 9, it feels like at this point, and I'm assuming you agree, it's a boxer saying, please give me credit for the third round. I landed more punches and being knocked the hell out in the 6th. Like it's one of those, like, in retrospect, it probably doesn't make a huge difference.
I'm not. Yeah. And again, I'm prefacing all this by saying I don't think any of this erases the fact that Clemson's better and still would have won. But if a few bounces go Notre Dame's way, perhaps it's a different game. Perhaps it's a closer game. If Julian Love isn't sitting out the first half because of concussion protocol, maybe it's a different game. But all things being equal, Clemson did a really good job exploiting Julian Love being out of the game. They made their hay in the second quarter. They established themselves as the dominant team going into halftime with a 23-3 lead. I don't think Notre Dame played a bad game defensively. Even if all these breaks went their way, sure, it might have been closer, but the real issue here for me was that Clemson was better on offense and certainly better on defense, Dan, because they completely neutralized Notre Dame's offense, what Notre Dame wanted to do out there.
Yeah, there is, especially as we zoom into the playoffs, a team, especially on offense, has to play with a certain amount of fearlessness. And that's a word that we've used a lot describing the types of quarterbacks and offenses that do well against Alabama, because there's just, you can't waste time with down drives. And Notre Dame's season could have been described in a number of very positive ways. But a fearless, downfield, chance-taking, creative offense probably isn't the first way to describe Notre Dame and the Ian Book offense, which is fine. They played to his strengths. But speaking to how different Notre Dame's defense and more vulnerable Notre Dame's defense was without Julian Love, that to me is a playoff thing where I think Alabama lost a starting corner early on in the season. Didn't ultimately affect them that much, because they have depth everywhere. You can weather, like, really good playoff teams, broadly speaking, can weather a loss pretty much anywhere other than quarterback.
Well, look,
and look the same.
Look no further than a guy like Dexter Lawrence.
Right.
On a normal team,
yes.
Emphasis on normal team, that's an enormous blow to lose a defensive lineman of his caliber.
Right.
For Clemson, it was almost insignificant. The line was every bit as good without him.
No, it's totally true. And it's almost why, and this is a discussion point probably for another day, if you are an 18 playoff proponent, it's driving home the point even more that the deepest and most talented teams are the ones that survive injuries. And those still are Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. Those are the teams that can weather things. Notre Dame's one deep on defense is as good as 99% of teams, and better than 99% of the teams in the country. But if they lose that clear best player, like Julian Love probably was, if you look at his impact against a great team like Clemson, it was Vaughn was the backup, Dante
Vaughn. Yeah, Dante Vaughn,
who seemed okay at times, but he got torched at times. And the numbers bore that out.
Clemson's defense was more than Notre Dame could handle. Took them out of rhythm. They didn't let Notre Dame establish any ground game or passing game for that matter. Right. And Ian Book truly was under assault the whole game. This was the kind of game that Clemson wanted to play defensively.
Yep.
The interesting point to me is the contrast that I think we saw between Ian Book and Trevor Lawrence out there. With Book, there's certainly room to grow and fine-tune his game. He's got 2 years left. But it does seem a little bit like we already know his ceiling.
Sure.
With Trevor Lawrence, dude, it's like he's already way better as a freshman.
The ceiling is the roof.
And it's like, oh, he just discovered he could, use the force or something. He's a once-in-a-generation quarterback. If he could go pro, he'd probably be the first guy off the board.
Wow.
And I just kept thinking, well, it's true. It's true. Facts only.
Okay.
Part of me was thinking, watching this game, if it wasn't a bit of a ghost of Christmas future type thing for Brian Kelly, because Book's got 2 years left. There's a chance that another quarterback emerges with a much higher ceiling than Ian Book. Would he again be in a position a year from now, 2 years from now, where he's looking at what he's got on the depth chart, looking at what he's got around the quarterback position, and thinking to himself, do I have to make another change?
Yeah, I mean, who is that quarterback for Notre Dame?
I don't know. And look, I don't know if it's Phil Jurkovec or somebody else, but
right.
I'm just saying, hypothetically, I feel like we know a lot about what Ian Book has to offer in a way that Trevor Lawrence is still growing and could get infinitely better.
I am not ready to crown Trevor Lawrence in that way because I am still old enough to remember Deshaun Watson from all of 2 years ago against Alabama on the biggest stage performing. But yes, in terms of potential shown as a freshman, yes, Trevor Lawrence has probably stood alone in what he has done on a huge platform. You know, going into that big of a situation with Clemson, it is pretty unique to his situation. And if you're a Clemson fan, the future is incredibly bright. The receivers, the running backs, the depth everywhere. Certainly the defensive line is going to take a pretty major hit after this season, but I don't expect it to be any sort of major hiccup given how they've recruited. Yeah. And Notre Dame wise, I mean, people seem to get upset, and this was, we mentioned this on the show. During Notre Dame games, you tweet from your account, Ty Hildenbrand.
Right. People still don't know the difference between you and I, by the way.
It's okay. And it's fine. But I tweeted out that like Notre Dame could have lost the game when they were down, whatever it was, 23-3, 30-3. They could have lost 100-3, and they still should have been in the playoff. And that it felt like obvious. I don't know, but people were very upset that like Notre Dame shouldn't have. Notre Dame can't win on the biggest stage year after year. We see this like
right.
They went 12-0. They beat 10 Power 5 teams. They couldn't control the quality of the teams they played. Like just to sort of relitigate everything, and then I am pretty sure they beat 2 Power 5 division winners in Northwestern and Pitt.
Yep.
So. It's not like the roads that other teams went through. Clemson went through in the 2018 ACC was that much more impressive. And I get it if you're sick of Notre Dame. But Ty, do you know how many tweets we got when the playoff pairings came out earlier on in December about Notre Dame not belonging and teams not in a conference shouldn't be in the playoff? Do you know how many tweets and Instagram messages and Facebook messages and voicemails we got along those lines? 0.0.
Yeah.
So a lot of hindsight quarterbacks showing up last night.
Look,
so
the most logical argument I heard was that Notre Dame was deserving, but that Georgia was a better team.
Okay.
And that I think that sounds right to me. Both things can be true at the same time.
Right.
My point has always been that the goal of any playoff system should be to group the deserving teams together and then let them figure out amongst themselves on the field who's best. That also seems logical. My favorite argument that I heard was that Notre Dame was undeserving because they're not in a conference and didn't win a conference championship game. And, oh, by the way, Georgia should have gone instead.
Right.
You can make those points separately, but not together. If you make them together, they contradict themselves. Ultimately, I think it's Notre Dame ran into a buzzsaw. They were a good team all year. Clemson was better. It showed in this game. Notre Dame didn't get the breaks that they needed in order to make it a closer game, but ultimately Clemson probably still the better team, definitely still the better team.
Yeah. Georgia is in the SEC, had opportunities to beat the SEC teams on their schedule. They mostly did. They came up short, and here we are. They had the opportunity. Everybody had opportunities to get to the playoff by winning games on the field. Some did. Some came up short. That's the sort of reality of the sport as it stands now. Shall we get to the other game?
We shall. So Clemson moves on 30-3, the victors over Notre Dame, an impressive performance all around for the Tigers. They will square off against, surprise, surprise, the Alabama Crimson Tide. The final score here was 45-34. The initial over-under was 79 points before it went up to 81 around kickoff. Talk about a statement here for Oklahoma's offense that they came this close to hitting the over despite having only 10 points at halftime.
That was pretty incredible. And it was a lot to ask. We talked about it to say Kyler Murray needs to be perfect, and he needs to be perfect immediately. And he flirted with that at times, but it was when they were down 17, 20 points, and it was just, you can't fall down. You just can't fall down against Alabama.
So the lay of the land is this. Oklahoma was down 31-10 at halftime. When we went live on our Instagram thing, they were down 31-10. They come out in the second half. They pick up the tempo. They end up scoring 24 points. They looked a lot better on offense. Kyler Murray looked a lot like the Heisman Trophy winner out there that we know and love. Really took matters into his own hands. I saw Quinnen Williams with a great quote, described him as inside the park home run fast.
Yeah.
Nice little baseball reference. Thank you, Quinnen. Still, the game was never really in doubt. The point spread was in doubt for a while. And ultimately, it is Oklahoma that ends up covering that 14-point line. But Alabama does win by 11. Here's what struck me, though, as being different between the first game and this one, just in reading some of the post-game stuff, which is one of the things that I like to do when I research. I like to read all the post-game comments and see what the players and coaches and others have to say. Oklahoma was clearly disappointed because they lost. And that's fair because, they lost a playoff game, right?
Right.
It seems like they're doubly disappointed because they truly feel like they beat themselves in the first half. Lincoln Riley said that they played their worst football. There were some other comments from players that seemed to indicate we think we could have beaten Alabama if we didn't beat ourselves in the first half. Do you agree with that, Dan? Do you think if things go better in the first half that Oklahoma has more of a case here?
What is it about Oklahoma's defense that gives you any sort of indication that they wouldn't give up 31 points in the first half against what could be the best offense in college football?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to disagree with the fact that Oklahoma didn't play its best game in the first half, but it's a common thing for a really good elite caliber team to make their opponents look bad, to create mistakes. That's what teams like Alabama and Clemson do to you. And to your point, Alabama was able to move the ball at will. Tua missed 3 passes all game. If you don't count the final drive where Bama was just eating clock, the Crimson Tide scored on 7 of their 9 drives in this football game.
Yeah.
So defense was a huge liability as expected in this game.
Yeah, I would. Yes. And it would be easy to point to Oklahoma's defense and say, of course, Tua was electric and unstoppable. But the way Tua plays, if you watch him and the rhythm with which he plays and the decision making and the accuracy and the confidence, poise, whatever adjective you want to throw at him, that's obviously accurate. He would be doing this for anybody. He would be doing this for Tennessee. He'd be doing this for Boise State. He'd be doing this for San Diego State. He'd be doing this for Purdue. He is just that good. And it's sort of astonishing to watch somebody who has so quickly mastered playing quarterback. And yes, he plays behind that line. Yes, he throws to Jerry Jeudy and hands it off to Damian Harris. All of these things are relevant context. But isolated, especially coming off an ankle injury where he's clearly not fully himself in terms of his running ability and ability to extend a play, throwing into an Oklahoma defense, it's not great. He just looked sensational. He looked unstoppable, and that's going against a quarterback that I still feel like deserves the Heisman. Kyler Murray had the unfortunate reality of having to throw into the Alabama defense, something that Tua never has to do in a game. So that's the difference to me contextually about the two of them in their Heisman cases. But my God, Tua, just like every correct check down, it's just everything in a rhythm, throwing to a place, and Henry Ruggs or Jerry Jeudy or whoever just sort of appears there. The ball lands in their holster. It's an incredible graduate level quarterbacking display from Tua pretty much every week. And what are you supposed to do? Because this is the first time Alabama has that caliber of quarterback joining everything else that makes Alabama great. And meanwhile, to not even give Alabama more credit, they're overhauling their coaching staff every year.
Every year.
And to do that and to maintain, if not raise the level of play and having to change their style. And it didn't quite get to the over, right? It was over about 80 and it ended.
Over-under went up to 81 at kickoff.
Right.
And they got to 79, which was actually the original line.
I isolating this Alabama performance, crazy impressive. The sort of 10,000 foot view of this. We have Alabama, Clemson, 4? 3?
Yep, 4.
I guess we had 3 last year in the semi, so it's the 3rd national championship, but 4th overall recently. Is this something that is exciting to you because we have these 2 high level teams? And I know we're going to do a much more detailed preview in upcoming shows, but is this something we get that conversation of like, is this good for the sport?
Yeah.
When the reality set in, obviously when Alabama probably goes up 20-0, that we're getting this fourth round. Did you get a fist pump out of that, or you're just like, all right, here we go?
I think it was expected. If anything, It was anticlimactic because it's what we expected all along. We've been talking about it for weeks on this show. It's really been a race to be third place because Alabama and Clemson felt like they were so much better. And to another point that we brought up on the live Graham feed that we did at halftime, this is not like Federer and Nadal. At least it doesn't feel that way. It doesn't feel like you're rooting for one or you're rooting for another. Most fans of college football are rooting for their team and I think are sick of both. And so maybe that speaks a bit to the lack of excitement for this game, despite the fact that they're two awesome teams.
Right.
The fact that the middle class in college football has shrunken the way it has definitely left a lot of people with, a lack of excitement for this game. Yeah.
And we have, when we look at whether it's, Golden State and Cleveland playing for a number of years in the finals, or as you mentioned, Rafa and Nadal, when they kept meeting, there was that sense of back and forth. There was that sense of personality and unique styles. And the unique styles of Alabama and Clemson that can be pointed to are just like, oh, they're deeper, more talented than everybody, and they have the best coaches, and they are able to just weather and survive even their down games. They're winning by 2 touchdowns, and they're just they're in college football purgatory almost. That Alabama is not fully playing on the same platform as most teams. It's 127 teams basically. And that's not fully true of other rivalries at the top in other sports to me.
Yeah, I will say I do find Clemson, just generally speaking, easier to root for because there's more personality there, if only with Dabo Swinney.
Yeah.
A lot of the fans that we talk to generally find Alabama as like rooting for the Death Star.
This to me almost felt like a good enough reason when we keep getting closer and closer to like the inevitability of it's going to be Alabama, Ohio State, or Alabama, Oklahoma, Alabama, Clemson, whoever, like Alabama, Georgia. When you're shrinking that, as you said, the middle class doesn't really exist. It's just the haves and everybody else. It almost gets me to the point of, what if we just had a version of the old system where we just had a mega day?
Here we go.
No. I'm not saying the old system, because I don't think you should be punishing teams that are national championship worthy. What if you just had a mega day of all of these New Year's Six games on the same day with the old structure of, SEC, ACC, and the Orange Bowl or whatever, Sugar Bowl. And then it's an actual just +1 of having some sort of BCS-esque situation where you're like, all right, all of these New Year's Six games have happened and it's going to be Alabama, Clemson again. So at least we could get this full exciting day of it instead of just like, all right, this is these 2 games that we know what's going to happen.
I do feel weird about the fact that the playoffs are played on December 29th.
Yeah.
And not on New Year's Day. And again, this is like a separate podcast altogether if we want to go there. Maybe we can do that in the off season. It feels weird to me that the biggest games aren't being played on New Year's Day.
Man, I want that day. I want that New Year's Day. And I know the Rose Bowl refuses to leave, and that's fine. Put everything on New Year's Day and just at the end of it say, okay, we're going to, because the more games we get in these NFL stadiums, obviously you get that with Sugar and Orange and everything like that. But I want that day, Ty. I want that day. That mega 6-game spectacular where everybody's in the same place. Something's on ABC, something's on Fox, something's ESPN. It's just where that's like our holiday. And that's what I want.
So there you go. It is Alabama. It is Clemson. It's a lot what we expected, to be honest, but they will be playing on January 7th. We will, of course, be having a full preview of that game where we're going to deep dive each team.
Yep.
But for the interim, huge wins for both Alabama and Clemson, definitely showing their mettle against quality opponents here in the college football playoff semifinals.
How far away do you think Notre Dame is from scoring a touchdown against Clemson? Are they that far? Seriously.
Oh, man.
Of weathering a huge loss somewhere. And
their line was overwhelmed by Clemson. Their line was overwhelmed.
For sure.
And Ian Book is not, like you said, Ian Book is not the kind of quarterback who's going to stretch the field. You saw when he tried to stretch the field, you could show a movie on that football. That's how long it hung up in the air. So I don't think they're that far off from scoring a touchdown. I think they're pretty far off from consistently being able to beat a team like Clemson, which is what they need to do.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. And we should also mention the Big Ten's scoreless streak in the college football playoff lives on.
Another year.
Big Ten has not scored a point since Ohio State beat Oregon. And I tweeted this out that the Midwest finally scores a point with Notre Dame.
It's a big moment, Dan. I cried a single tear.
But still no touchdowns since January 12th, 2015 for the Midwest in the college football playoff.
Speaking of offensive disappointment, Dan.
Yes.
Let's turn the page and let's talk about some of the other bowl games. And let's start let's start with the Cheez-It Bowl, Dan.
Oh, you rascal.
Let's start with the Cheez-It Bowl. So a bunch of games transpired between the time of our last recording and this show, of which is the Cheez-It Bowl, where we had 17 points in total, 9 interceptions in total, and overtime. To sum this one up, let me quote directly from our text thread, something that you sent to me early Thursday morning, quote, holy S, I won't use the expletive, TCU won. Daniel,
indeed.
Shout out to anybody out there who watched this game in real time in its entirety. TCU the victor again, 10-7, went almost exactly as we expected. Grayson Muhlstein,
yeah.
I don't know how you say it. The senior quarterback for TCU went 7 of 20 for 27 yards and 4 touchdowns.
A chunk of that coming at the end, by the way.
A chunk coming at the end, yes. Yeah. And somehow did so in a winning effort. I don't even have a sound for in a winning effort, Dan.
It would you would have to reverse the ba 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 ba. So it'd be ba 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 ba. It just goes up at the end.
1.35 yards per attempt for great. I can't even say it. Muhlstein.
Like something like that.
Yeah, him.
I can't imagine we're going to be repeating this name after today's show.
1.35 yards per attempt.
QBR of 1.7 in this game. This game was truly terrific, and I understand the appeal of watching a game like this. It's basically the whole game was bringing the shortstop into pitch in the 23rd inning.
That's right.
That was essentially, or when like a team has 7 guys foul out and they have to play 3-on-5. That's what this entire game was. And I was inundated with tweets, predictably so. Like, you have to make this your dramatic drive chart. You have to read all of the possessions in this game. You have to spotlight this game with your pal Dvorak and the New World Symphony.
Of course, that's what you got to do.
Let me tell you something, Ty. I, like many people, I try to prepare, I try to train, I try to get my head in the right mindset for doing something like this, because we've gone through a lot of bad drives. We've gone through a lot of bad games offensively throughout this season. And it all is going to culminate in something. I just didn't know what it was going to be. And then when I saw that Cal and TCU were playing a bowl game, when these two offenses were getting together, I got with my friend Super Frog.
Okay.
And I got with my friend Oski.
Yep.
And we hit the mountains. We bundled up. We took our cars to the frozen tundra of Russia, Siberia, in the middle of winter.
It's cold.
And we had to prepare. They had to prepare me. They were my training partners. And we knew we were fighting against offensive competency. We knew offensive competency was in the lab, was in the gym, lifting, having his electrolytes tested.
Doing like Saquon Barkley style squats.
Yes, squats, sprinting around the inside track. But there I was with Oski and Super Frog, chopping wood, pulling sleds, trudging through the snow, and just preparing myself for a Cheez-It Bowl of a lifetime, Ty. I was doing all of the unorthodox things. I was getting my mind right. I was getting my legs right.
Doing some yoga?
Was doing yoga outside.
Okay, yeah.
And then the game happened, Ty. And it did not disappoint. I was ready, Ty. I was like, oh, this is what those long nights with the wheelbarrows trained me for. So without further ado, punt, interception, touchdown, punt, interception, punt, downs, interception, end of half, interception, punt, touchdown, punt, interception, downs, punt, downs, interception, field goal.
That's like your opus right there, Dan.
Oh my God, Ty. My spleen hurts.
How many times did you practice that? Be honest.
0 times.
No, come on.
0 times. I'm telling you 0.
Wow.
My side really does hurt. I took some hits doing that.
Would you rather see your team in a Cheez-It style bowl, a slop fest, or have your bowl game be straight up canceled like the First Responders Bowl?
Slop fest, 100%. People are going to remember the Cheez-It Bowl fondly for screwed up reasons, but having to travel and go through the motions, and it's your last game if you're a senior, if you're it's Boise State and BC, and have it just called, it's so deflating. We're at least the Cheez-It Bowl, you can always say I was there when Graham Muhlstein completed that third pass or whatever he ended up with. There's something, or Grayson, not Graham, sort of sickeningly fun.
The Cheez-It Bowl enters into the rarefied air of the 2008 Sun Bowl with this showing.
Yes.
Again, 10-7, your final score. For what it's worth, the Arizona Bowl didn't do much better yesterday, 16-13 in favor of Nevada. But nonetheless, the Cheez-It Bowl, a crowd favorite among our Solid Verbal listeners.
Yeah.
The other one
should be pointed out, by the way.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're moving on. Shewo Alonalua had a baller of a game. Those for almost 200 on the ground. And I assume you saw Justin Rogers, who's a big heralded young freshman quarterback for TCU. He came in for one snap, and they pointed out he doesn't have full use of his foot.
Good.
But they put him in a game, and it did not work out super well.
All right. As I mentioned, the First Responder Bowl between Boston College and Boise was canceled due to weather. I believe the first time in the history of college football that a bowl game has been straight up canceled. Boston College led 7-0 with about 5 or so minutes left in the first quarter. Then the weather came. There was a long lightning delay for about 90 minutes, and they called it off, which, sucks for the players and certainly the fans who paid to get there. I did see that both schools said that they're going to offer refunds for tickets that were purchased through their athletic departments. But you hate to see that, a sad way for Brett Rippon to end his career at Boise, but the coaches seem to be okay with it. They seem to think that it was done for the right reasons, to certainly keep player safety at front of mind. So, yeah, there you go. I did see in our confidence pool that they just wiped this one away. Right. And so, if you're me and you put 36 or something on Boise, they actually just took the game away entirely. And now instead of having 41 confidence points available, the max that you could have available was 40, which I think was the right move.
All right. So, yeah, them's the breaks with the confidence pool. There's always going to be some sort of risk with these games. And unfortunately, mostly for the players and fans and everybody involved, didn't happen.
Did not happen. So, look, there were a bunch of bowl games, as I said, that went on. We're not going to go through each of them individually, but instead, I think, highlight some of the things that really jumped out to you and I, like the Cheez-It Bowl and First Responder Bowl, of course. Let's talk about Army hanging 70 on Houston and the ramifications of that.
That escalated very quickly, both on and off the field.
Yes, a 56-point margin of victory for Army ties the FBS record for largest margin ever in a bowl game. You have to go back to the iconic GMAC Bowl back in, I think, 2008. Everyone remembers that game.
GMAC? Yeah.
I'll be honest with you here. I was really workshopping a bit about Army ordering a code red on Houston. And then I remembered that A Few Good Men was about the Marine Corps, so I scrapped it.
Oh, yeah. You were working the clubs with that joke. You were testing out. You had a whole list of, it's too bad it didn't work out.
I was trying. Regardless, what Army did to Houston was cold-blooded, possibly illegal, and awesome. It was good to see Army going out on a real high note. A great 11-win season.
Yeah, I mean, including the bowl game, yes. They were a 10-2 team that won the bowl game, and thus we can call them an 11-win, at least right now, 11-win team.
And looks like Major Applewhite may be feeling the effects of that on the Houston side.
Yeah, it appears he's out, and the rumor is, the not so held secret rumor is that Dana Holgorsen, who I think it's sort of been time for he and West Virginia to go their separate ways, certainly with his experience at Texas, and he was at Houston, is the big name rumored, should everything play out like it appears it's going to play out at the time of this recording Sunday morning, is going to be the guy for the Cougars, and just a bad look for Houston. And obviously we can't speak to any sort of internal acrimony between Major Applewhite and the powers that be, both within the athletic department and those that pull the strings with the athletic department at Houston. But real strange to be fired based on a bowl result. What was the Armed Forces Bowl?
Yep.
So I have to assume there's just a lot more at play here than just being embarrassed by a good Army team. By the way, you know how many points Colgate allowed to Army? That'd be 28. And Houston allowing 70. In the wake of this, Kendall Briles resigned, and I assume that's a procedural thing. Resigned and looks to be, or I don't even know if it's official, taking the job at Florida State, the offensive coordinator job at Florida State, which...
Okay.
That might indicate Willie Taggart is not in that safe a spot if he has to make a move like that all of a sudden. So obviously Alt Bell leaves Florida State for the UMass job, and there was an opening, but okay. So that's Houston.
All right. Where else do we want to go? What else stood out to you?
Okay. Real quickly, we talked about Army. We talked about the Cheez-It Bowl. I thought Troy did a really nice job with Sawyer and BJ Smith in their backfield, taking down a pretty difficult Buffalo team, especially on offense. It was Paul Johnson going out with the whimper against Minnesota. I know a lot of people are like, man, he's gonna rush for 600 yards in this quick lane bowl against Minnesota. Turns out the dude who was going to be running for many yards was Mohamed Ibrahim for Minnesota. Really nice win for PJ Fleck and the Gophers. Any thoughts about the thud of an ending for your Georgia Tech?
Yeah. Well, you said some people said that Georgia Tech was going to run for 600 yards. I was one of those people.
Yes. I was trying to be cool.
I was all in on Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
And perhaps I should have known better. That's going to be a recurring theme here as we go through some of my highlights.
Rough defense.
There were some games here where it was a little bit more obvious, certainly in hindsight, who I should have picked. And this might be one of them.
Yes. Outside of that, Jalen Ferguson, who you correctly spotlighted in our preview of Louisiana Tech Hawaii as being a dude, to the shock of nobody in America and the broader world at large, was a dude in the Hawaii Bowl. Really cool to see that. Daniel Jones, your guy, hanging just a ton on the worst uniformed team of the bowl season, Temple Owls.
Danny Jones, man, he is working hard for that first round grade.
Yes, he very much is.
He is working hard.
He threw some dimes. I wish it was a more consistent career at Duke. Wish there weren't games where Duke just got weirdly and randomly shellacked, but we're still talking about an 8-9 win Duke team. That's fine.
Dan, is Daniel Jones going to be that quarterback? We're not going to plunge into any deep level of NFL analysis here.
Right.
Is he going to be that quarterback like Josh Allen last year, who everyone talked themselves into as a first round caliber talent?
Well, I think Daniel Jones has accomplished things in college more so than Josh Allen did. That was strictly physical. And I think people look at Daniel Jones as, being athletic, having a nice arm, a good decision maker most of the time, and had the tutelage at Duke that, he's coached by the Mannings guy and everything like that. So there's something about that angle. I think it's more like a Kyle Bowler, Trent Edwards. We're just like, oh, it's not a great year, but this guy seems to have all the measurables.
He can throw 80 yards on his knees. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think it's more apt to that. I think he could be fine.
If my team in the NFL, and I'm a Giants fan, if the Giants end up drafting Daniel Jones, I'm going to be pissed.
A Ryan Nassib type.
I'd be happier with Ryan Nassib than Daniel Jones.
Wasn't he on the Giants? Is he still on the Giants?
I don't know. He was for a while.
Okay. Beyond that, I'll go to a quarterback who actually I think has a pretty high ceiling. BYU Zach Wilson. Not a great year for BYU's offense. They were a nightmare in 2017, so simply being below average, that's a win. Win for the Cougars. True freshman Zach Wilson, 18 of 18 in their win over, I think it was Western Michigan. And I think he was committed to Boise State. And so as a true freshman, having the season he did, which much more good than not, kind of a cool thing to pay attention to moving forward, because BYU does play a lot of Power 5 teams and should be a team to at least pay attention to on whatever level you're interested in. Jonathan Taylor, tailback tie.
Yeah, big game.
I don't even know if a guy goes over 200 yards in a bowl game against a top level name in Miami. I can't say top level anything else. The story is still what the hell happened to this Miami team, right?
Oh man, Mark Richt has lost all control.
Would you say that Miami has gone bank-ricked? No.
Talk about working the club scene with jokes.
I know. I tried and I failed.
Yeah.
And I admit that freely. Miami there was the whole thing with N'Kosi Perry and Snapchat and a screen grab from earlier on in the season. So he's not starting. Malik Rozier's not good. N'Kosi Perry came in for a little bit. Not good. It was just, and this is something that I think we glossed over. That, and maybe we sort of mentioned offhandedly, but if there were ever a team where you're just like, listen. Miami has a pretty good defense. There's talent all over this defense. But if ever there were a team that had yes, we're at the game, but we're not really at the game. Miami was such a good candidate with the way they finished out their season.
Well, you picked Miami.
We did not hit that enough.
Didn't you pick Miami? Did you switch?
I almost certainly did, yes, because of the defense and my points per drive theory of defensive teams. And by the way, it's like 19-7. Like, it's not bad.
Well, I switched my pick from Wisconsin to Miami after I heard that King Cone is going to be getting the start.
Yeah.
And
that's rough.
That did not work.
Who didn't do much.
No, it didn't do much. You didn't have to.
No. So, Pinstripe Bowl for the ages. Baylor does everything, gets everything from...
This is another one where I got dunked on by my own logic.
Yeah.
I was pretty much, before we recorded...
Good book title.
Yeah.
Dunked on by my own logic.
I've been there for a while. But this is one of those games where I was all in on Baylor. I really wanted to take them. And then I talked myself out of it because on paper, it seemed like Vandy was way better. But Baylor had that level of pluck that I required in a game like this. And I wish I would have taken them. Nice win for Baylor.
Very nice win for Baylor. They go from 1-11 to technically a winning record.
Yeah.
They go 6-6 this year, I believe. And that they win their 7th in the bowl game. Keyshawn Vaughn, my goodness, in a losing effort. One of the I don't know if you have the music there. But there it is.
Yeah.
He runs all over Baylor in a losing effort. Just untackleable, a total monster. I think he transferred from Illinois, I want to say. And, a crazy, bright spot. Wazoo dinked and dunked their way to the Valero Alamo Bowl win.
Let's talk about the Valero Alamo Bowl. I have many thoughts on this.
Okay, Ty, I am stretched and ready.
Here's the good. Mm-hmm. The good is that Wazoo beat Iowa State 28-26. The upshot
cap
for them,
on a really good season.
Yeah, the upshot for them, an 11-win season, which is great. Gardner Minshew threw for almost 300 yards. He broke Jared Goff's single-season Pac-12 passing record. That's all good.
Only took him 50 throws.
Only took him 50 throws, right? Here's the weird.
Yeah.
There were a lot of weird bits.
Yes.
To this Alamo Bowl. The weird is that there were 3 turnovers within the first 4 minutes of this game, one of which was a pick 6 that was called back because of a phantom taunting call. I believe a phantom taunting call. Argue with me if you want. I don't care. That wasn't taunting.
He slowed down, showed the ball a little, turned around a little.
That's not taunting. Get out of here.
I am fine with that not being called forever and ever,
sure.
But it wasn't running through the tape at the Rio Olympics. It wasn't head down, full velocity, arms pumping.
Fair enough. The other weird things in this game, Iowa State called for 7 false start penalties and also had 2 guys ejected for targeting. The first targeting was clear as day. The second one, buddy. The second one was extremely questionable. And it led to a weird bit in the booth with Greg McElroy explain. I can't even get through it. Quote, the crown of the helmet is bigger than it used to be.
Yeah.
Which is like an instant classic.
As a rule, and I think you feel the same way, we're not huge on picking on broadcasters. Because we understand it's a tough job. You know, you like your Tom Hammond GPA, you know, a fact only he cares about, blah, blah, blah. But by and large, these are pros. These are men and women that are studied, they're prepared, they're ready to fill time if it's a blowout.
McElroy was voted one of the 20 smartest college football players of all time. So he's clearly well-educated, way smarter than you and I put together. Also, we meet these people when we go to places, so we try not to be critical.
Sure. And it's a tough job because things are bang bang and the referees don't have the benefit of slow-mo in the moment, obviously. The disappointing thing about this game, I think it was Dave Pasch, who I like alongside Bill Walton a lot of the time. I think it's just a weird pairing. And Greg McElroy, I don't know who was on the sideline. Was it Luganbill?
Yeah, it was Tom Luganbill.
It was Tom Luganbill.
My boy, Luganbill. I love me some Luganbill.
Yes. There was just something about this game, and I don't know if it's because Greg McElroy is at a conference network where it just felt like this game was being broadcast on like the Valero network, where it was so vanilla and there was such a sheen of like, gotta hand it to blah, 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 blah. Like there was just, that game could have been called by an AI bot where it's just like, by the letter of the law, you gotta say, there was no insight, there was no personality, there was no expertise. It was like we were texting back and forth about this, and I was trying my best not to tweet about it and be snarky about it, and I ultimately lost out to my better instincts and tweeted out something like Greg McElroy would hand it to the aliens who just vaporized the Eastern Seaboard. They had a plan and they executed. It was a rough watch. Does Greg McElroy do games during the season?
He does. He does a good job. He does. Look, I can't get past the crown of the helmet being bigger than it used to be. That feels like something you'd read in The Art of War. Right. What does that even mean?
One of the things I said was it was like watching announcers call a game like they were doing a Universal Studios, the live fear factor. Oh my God, what is he going to do next, folks? And unfortunate, because this was one of the games that I was really looking forward to see Hakeem Butler, to see Gardner Minshew put a cap on his season, and it was a rough television program, Ty.
All right. Auburn destroys Purdue 63-14, a slight miscalculation by me.
This is where the defense really played a nice role.
I determined that Auburn wouldn't care about this game. Dan, They scored 56 in the first half. They set an FBS bowl record scoring 56 first half points. The saving grace, though, if I could, with a confidence pool, is that you can take chances like this, but only put 2 confidence points on it, which is what I did. Our friend Peter, who runs the subreddit, he picked Purdue. He told me he put 39 points on the Boilermakers here.
Wow.
So maybe not the best strategery from our friend Peter.
Shout out to the Hoff.
Big win for Auburn. Big game for Jarrett Stidham, who's going pro, clearly trying to goose his own NFL prospects. 15 of 21, 373 and 5 touchdowns through the air. Nice game for Auburn. Nice game for him as they win in resounding fashion.
And they lose a lot on both sides. And I just want to throw this in here, Ty. As somebody who roots for a team that opens their 2019 with Auburn on a neutral field, yeah, Jarrett Stidham, it's time. Mm-hmm. Yep, making the right choice. Great job. Nothing left to prove. I would definitely maximize now.
Speaking of SEC teams with big W's in their bowl game, let's talk a little bit about Florida. 41-15 over Michigan. Yes. A great moment for Dan Mullen. Really curious, by the way, to see how they look in 2019 because the Gators are really young. They've got weapons on offense. They've got players on defense. Quarterback still obviously an open question. And then if you're Michigan, clearly this is not the way you want to close out your season. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it's more wood for the fire of the Harbaugh haters. I don't really put much stock in it. I think I should have paid better attention to my own rule and taken Florida because of that motivation gap that we talked about in our preview shows. Michigan was just a heartbeat away from being in the playoff. There was never a chance that they were going to be up for this game, Dan. I missed it. I should have picked Florida.
Yeah, no, this was a motivation game. We talked about this and looking at the teams that even if they are better defensively, that there's a motivation gap. And Florida, I mean, first year coach, free money, having a nice season, beating LSU, and making a New Year's Six game in year one of the Dan Mullen era. Yes, it's a situation where they're playing so much looser than whoever they're playing, most likely. And we whiffed on it. They ran the ball really well. Felipe Franks made some impressive throws. They don't turn the ball over, or at least Felipe Franks doesn't. And Michigan-wise, they looked flat. They made mistakes. They couldn't run the ball. Certainly not having they didn't have the starting right tackle. They didn't have Karan Higdon. Defensively, no Rashawn Gary, Aubrey Solomon, Devin Bush. They took some key hits, but this goes with the depth playing such a huge role. Michigan should not be 26 points worse than Florida, even with filling in some gaps. And they looked outclassed. And I don't know what to say about Michigan's ceiling beyond, think we've seen it. Think this is it. If this is what they're going to look like on offense, if this is the plan moving forward, yeah, they're going to threaten double-digit wins, and that's that.
All right. Florida, again, 41-15 over Michigan. Some other highlights for me. Yesterday, Virginia shuts out South Carolina 28-0. They were 11 for 17 on third downs. They held South Carolina to 2 of 13 on third downs. And Bryce Perkins, again, looking real solid for Bronco Mendenhall. I'm excited to see what he does next season. Yeah,
Virginia quietly, and it's a weird ACC year for sure, but they get to 8 wins, and it was a disaster coming in for Bronco Mendenhall in Charlottesville. And so to get what he's gotten and the Who's have gotten out of Bryce Perkins, Olamide Zaccheaus has a nice game. Again, he's just every week it seems. And I should point out Virginia had the better points per drive. Defense coming into this game. Oh
my God, you're insufferable.
That's on our podcast charter. But yeah, it was a very impressive day for Virginia, and I think this was the Belk Bowl, Adam Amin game. I had this game on mute, unfortunately, because I was watching with some Michigan people.
Shots fired! Wow,
I know, but really strong way to end the season for Virginia.
Hey, let's stay in the ACC. Wake overcame an 18-point deficit to edge out Memphis in the Birmingham Bowl. Nice effort here from Jamie Newman, Wake's quarterback. He is back next season along with Sam Hartman. So Wake has 2 quarterbacks who have proven that they play at a pretty high level. Again, nice win here for Wake. And what else in the ACC? Oh, Syracuse pulling away in the second half from West Virginia. They won the Camping World Bowl. And congratulations, they get to 10 wins for the very first time since 2001. I don't know if you watched any of this game. It was getting real heated. And at one point I tweeted out that I thought there was going to be a fight because it seemed like there were a lot of helmets flying around and weird stuff going down. But nice win here for Cuse.
Somebody tweeted out that just the phrase "getting chippy" should be a fantasy thing, which absolutely 100% yes, will become a fantasy thing because that is the go-to phrasing for some fighting. And I thought Jack Allison made some throws, wasn't super accurate for West Virginia. And my initial instinct when looking at Syracuse and getting to 10 wins, including the bowl, so 9-3, even a 9-3 Syracuse season is incredible. My original instinct was, well, they didn't really play anybody in the non-conference. I guess it was a Notre Dame year as an ACC team. So outside of that, it's Wagner and Western Michigan and UConn, whatever, and the ACC was down, and there's just some context. North Carolina's down, and Wake isn't great. Louisville down year. To say okay, it was a perfect storm for Syracuse to go 9-3. But you know what? Screw that. Syracuse had a really good year. Eric Dungy had a really nice career. Was beat up, it seemed like, every other week and fought through a lot of pain. Really cool story to see Cuse finish as a top 20 team and get to 10, including the bowl game.
So there are 11 games, not including the national championship, yet to be played. Those games, of course, start on New Year's Rockin' Eve at high noon with Cincinnati and Virginia Tech. It extends all the way through the Sugar Bowl, which they're playing at 8:45 Eastern on New Year's Day between Texas and Georgia down there in New Orleans. We will be back on Wednesday to recap a lot of these games here that obviously we can't recap at the current moment. And then we'll be back on Sunday to preview the big one, the national championship between Clemson and Alabama. Right now, the point spread is 6 points in favor of the Crimson Tide. You're over under about 60, hovering right around there, 59.5 on my screen at time of recording. So got a lot more college football to discuss here. It's been a fun bowl season so far with a lot of intriguing storylines. It all culminated yesterday with, of course, the playoff, which, personally, I wish would have went a little bit differently. However, it wasn't unexpected in the end when we've got Clemson and Alabama now set to square off again for the fourth time in as many years.
And if you haven't yet, we previewed the games. If you're listening to this Sunday, Monday, and you're wondering about previews for the games on Monday and Tuesday, we've done those. Those are in our playoff previews. I think is it only 5?
We did 5 bowl previews.
No, I know, but is show number 5 the one with the games on Monday and Tuesday, or is there a little bit of 4 in there as well?
The fourth show includes 3 games, I believe, from New Year's Eve. And then the rest of the games are in bowl preview number 5.
Are there specific games, and we're not previewing them, but that you are particularly looking forward to with these last few matchups?
It'd be a lot easier for me to make some of my arguments if Georgia got dismantled by Texas in the Sugar Bowl. Or if Washington were to take the screws to Ohio State. I would feel much better about my standing for the next 8 months or so.
Right.
In dealing with Notre Dame didn't deserve to. I would feel much better if those 2 situations came to pass. I don't think either will.
Right.
But yeah, I'll be watching those games. I think Washington, Ohio State's a fun matchup. LSU, UCF to me is intriguing just because so many players on the LSU side are going to be sitting out, even more so than what we discussed in our bowl preview. There's a bunch of guys in that defense who aren't playing in this game.
I think that's the narrative bowl. There's a lot of narrative on the line with LSU, UCF, with LSU beating Georgia and UCF potentially winning their 26th straight game.
Yeah.
NC State, Texas A&M to me has an opportunity to just be a flat out fun game, as does Mizzou, Oklahoma State, and Stanford, Pitt. If Pitt can run the ball and Stanford's throwing it, I think you get a good matchup of different types of offensive success. So I'm hoping for the best.
That game's got some serious Cheez-It Bowl potential.
It also does have some Cheez-It Bowl potential it's the Sun Bowl. And it's the kind of bowl that you're like, ooh, things are not happening in any sort of fun college football way. But that's fine. We need some of those to balance out everything else. My only question to you now, Ty, is one, how'd Christmas go?
Christmas was good.
Yeah, because we haven't recorded since.
No,
do you want to review any of the gifts you got others? Do you want to review gifts people got you? You sent me one of your gifts. I think you were super excited for, not something I would have anticipated you getting for Christmas. You got a hedge trimmer?
I'm Susie Homemaker now. You know that.
You got a big old yard. You got to trim.
Yeah.
Did you have a hedge trimmer before that is now being replaced?
No, God, no.
What, did you get anything else of note?
No. Well, what I was the way I was going to answer that question is by just saying it's always more exciting to give the gifts to the little kids than it is to receive gifts as an adult. So that was fun, giving some Harry Potter gifts to my niece and nephew, and the outrage that ensued when one got something that the other wanted.
That was tough.
That was exciting.
What were they, like action figures with board? What kind of Harry Potter stuff?
Well, no, we're talking Harry Potter Legos versus Star Wars Legos, and my nephew.
I'm so glad you brought this up.
My nephew wanted the Harry Potter Quidditch set.
Mm-hmm.
And my niece got it. And so after she recognized that he wanted her gift, she had the wherewithal to hold her hands up above her head and yell "the injustice," which really only made things worse for the little guy. But that was fun to watch from afar.
The injustice!
It was perfect.
I love Legos. And I had a question for you, Ty. Is it too late for me and Legos?
No. God, no. You kidding me?
I'm a proud member of the Open Floor Globe. Our friends Ben Golliver and Andrew Sharp. They're both into Legos.
Yeah, no, there's nothing.
And it almost like they treat it like meditation, like it centers them.
Yeah,
like okay, I can focus on this thing, and my mind is only on this thing. And I haven't thought about Legos in a long time, but I was going to ask you if any Legos were involved. And man, I'd love to build like just a giant gas station. I want to build a space shuttle. I want to build the Sphinx. Like. That's as like the further and further we get into a world of like apps and tablets and Roku, Apple, whatever, Apple Watches, all I want to do is build a space shuttle. It's all I want out of life. So the problem is Jody with an eye, bless her. We live in a New York apartment. And anytime I even buy a pair of shoes, she's like, what the hell is going on? We do not have room for this tiny plant. And so to bring in a giant box of Legos would probably not go over super well. So I'm glad your niece and nephew are Lego maniacs in training. New Year's plans.
I think we're going to the Solid Wife's brother's place.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're not doing like that prefix $100 a head?
No. I
Silver
tried
balloons.
That. No. A lot of people were asking us about this on the Instagram feed. Both you and I are of the same mind that New Year's Eve is wildly overrated.
If I make it to 10:30, that might be the upset of bowl season. New Year's Eve. We're going to a 5:30 dinner because we're going with the family with little kids, and that's what time little kids eat. And your pal Dan does not hate 5:30 dinners, so that'll be around halftime into the Redbox Bowl, which I guess I'll just DVR or find some way to catch. I'm not all that broken over missing part of that, so I'll watch games. We'll get some, I don't know, we're gonna get Chinese food or Japanese food or something like that, and then watch whatever I missed and go to sleep at a reasonable hour. New Year's Day, gonna make my New Year's Day dip. Watch games around here, maybe have a couple friends over. Nothing all that exciting.
Fair enough. Let me close out with an anecdote from my watching the Notre Dame playoff loss with Mama H.
Oh, yes. How is she?
Mama H is fine. Mama H was perturbed by the showing by Notre Dame yesterday, obviously.
Again, we're Mike Bray people now.
We are Mike Bray people.
Yeah.
So as you might expect, if you read my Twitter account, you could tell that I was pretty active on the Twitter sphere, as I guess is somewhat of an expectation now, being so we do this show and we're noted fans of our particular teams. But I wasn't talking quite as much to Mama H as I think Mama H would have liked. Mama H was kind of left out to dry watching this game, and I was quiet, kind of trapped in my own little cyber world. And so at one point, she says to me, "What are you doing over there? What are you so enthralled with over there?" And I said, "Well, I'm on Twitter." She said, "What are you doing on Twitter?" I said, "I'm reading. I'm tweeting about the game." She looks at me with this face, and she says, "Why? What the F are you going to say?" And I thought to myself, wow, that's really a great motto for Twitter.
I use it less. This is not to pat myself on my own back, but I use it less. And then when I check in and you miss like when something becomes a thing, when everybody starts cracking a joke about the same thing or is outraged about the same thing, the only thing that strikes me is, you know what? I'm pretty glad I missed this. I'm pretty glad all these other people have so much time on their hands that they can just like live tweet Twitter. And I somehow managed to do something a little bit more productive. Not that much more productive, but Twitter's dumb.
Why? What the F are you going to say? Getting dunked on by your mom as your team is getting dunked on by a clearly superior opponent in the Clemson Tigers.
Yeah. What are you going to say? There's not much there.
On that note, thank you for tuning into the show. My name is Ty. His name is Dan. We are The Solid Verbal. If you haven't yet subscribed, you can find us at itunes.com/solidverbal or anywhere where you get your podcasts. You can also find us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Stay tuned over the next couple days and weeks. We'll be talking more about these bowl games and certainly the national championship on January the 7th between, yes, the Clemson Tigers and Alabama Crimson Tide. In the meantime, for that guy over there in New York City, for myself, Ty, here in Eastern Pennsylvania, thanks again for listening to the show. Enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend. We'll talk to you soon. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.